Hello, welcome to a demonstration on how to generate present value factor tables using two methods. In this demonstration, I'll be able to show you how to generate those factors using the present value function in Excel, and I'll also be able to show you how to also generate the same table using the power function that is also part of Excel. This may not be as familiar to many, but it actually does exist. So I'll be able to demonstrate that to you so that you'll be able to see how you can actually use it to generate present value factors. All right, so we begin with the present value function, which is probably the more familiar one to many. Right, so I've already done some work here just to set up the table so that it's we can actually zero in on the important elements of the table creation. So what we're then going to do is we are going to create one formula right here, and once we've actually created, we'll be able to copy it across and copy it downwards. So all we need to do is just to create one formula, and that's actually a shortcut in Excel one can actually use instead of having to recreate the formulas over and over again. So to call up the present value function, we just enter the equal sign and then we type in PV, right? And it will actually show up. And then what you have to do is, the secret is that you have to double click on it when it shows up. Double click. And then once you've done that, it's now activated. Because it's actually activated, you can see that it's actually showing you the template on how you are actually going to generate the formula itself. So it begins with rate, right? So it's actually showing you that right now you're actually working on the rate, and we know our rate is going to be that one. So we just click on it and it generates a cell reference for us. But now, because we want to create the formula once and then copy that across, we want to make sure that the row number is not going to change. So we're going to do absolute referencing on row number 5. So to the left of 5, there should be a $sign. Now the quickest way of actually doing that is to use the F4 key, which is the function key on your keyboard. If you press it once, see there it typed in the $signs for both, which means this is actually absolute referencing for both the column and the row. That's not what we want. So we press it again, and you can see it is actually removed one from B. It's now left with 5. Okay, so which means when we copy across, we want to make sure that every time we copy the formula, it's going to maintain the same row, because we want to be using the same rates over and over again. Right, so once we've done that, we put in a comma so that we can activate the next part of our template here, and it's saying number of periods, and we know the number of periods are actually going to be in this cell. So we click on that, and once again we want to do absolute referencing for the column A, right? So we want to make sure that there's a $sign to the left side of A, so we press. Once it's absolute referencing, that's not what we want. We press again. We do not want to do absolute referencing for the row, but we want one for the A, right? So you can actually see that it's actually, as long as you actually press the F4 key, it will continue to generate the $sign so that you can do the necessary absolute referencing wherever you want. Now you may find that on your some keyboards can actually be different. If the F4 key has something else written on it, usually there will be an FN key that is normally close to the shift control on your keyboard right there, which means the FN activates the function key. So you have to press the FN key, and before pressing whatever the F4 key will be, that way it selects the correct function. So it's important to remember that. Okay, so we now want to move on to the next step. So we put a comma. It's not the payment we want, it's actually the future value. So to bypass the next function that we do not need, we just put in a second comma there. You can see it's now it has now moved us to FV, which is the future value. So now in this particular case, we want to generate a factor. We are not generating an amount. So if it was an amount, we're going to put in a minus, and then we specify whatever the cell reference with the amount is, or if it's an absolute amount that we wanted to enter, we could actually do that. But in this particular case, we want just to put a 1 because it's only a factor that we want to create that we can then use to apply to a specific amount in the future. But remember, this is just a factor table we're actually generating. Now, the reason why we put a minus before specifying the 1 or a minus before selecting the specific amount is because by default, Excel will generate a negative result. So when you put a negative, it's actually going to calculate a positive number, because what we want to see a positive number there. We don't want to see a negative factor. All right, it won't be meaningful at all. So once we've done this, that's the end of our formula. So we'll put a closing parenthesis, because remember we began with an open parenthesis there. So we have to close it off. Now what you also notice with Excel is that if for any reason you'd actually forgotten to put in the closing parenthesis, if you press enter, it will actually insert that for you. If it's only one closing parenthesis that's actually required. So, and there we have it. It is actually generated. The first factor. And all we have to do is to use our fill handle. Our fill handle is when we place our pointer on the bottom right hand corner of the selected cell, you see there's actually a small square there, right there. If you hover your pointer right on it, it changes your pointer to a thin black cross, right? You place it there, you can see that, right? A thick white cross enables you to select a range of cells, but this one here enables you to use what a fill handle, which means you're actually able to copy the same formula. So we hold the mouse button down and drag to the right. So we're actually copying the same formula. It's being applied. That's where we're doing some absolute referencing for columns and rows, so that the formula is going to be relative along that particular selection. And you can see that it's actually applying a new formula to each cell as we go that direction. Now then we use our fill handle to go downwards. Okay, so before you know it, the table has actually been generated for you. So again, so this is actually the method you use for the using the present value function. Now we switch over to a method number 2, which is a power function, right? So power function attempts to follow the formula of the present value of $J in n periods. So it's basically trying to implement that particular formula. There are some who may say, okay, present value, even though it was cool, it was quite easy to use, but it did not follow the formula itself. So there are some who would not want to forget the formula of present value of a $J in n period. So they want to stick to the original formula. So that's where the power function actually comes in. So let's go for it. So we enter the equal sign, right, in order to activate formula. And then we say 1, which is that one that you see right there, divided by, you can see there's a 1 divided by open parenthesis 1 plus r, closing parenthesis n, right, to the power n. Okay, so now once we've actually done this, 1 divided by, we can actually call up the power function, right, and it does come up. So we double click on it. Okay, now it's now saying what number do you want, right? So we want 1 plus, you can see I'm actually following that particular formula right there, plus the rate, which is that one. And now for the rate, we want to make sure that when we copy the formula across, it's going to maintain the raw number. So again, we use the F4 key, we want to make sure that there is absolute referencing of row number 5. Okay, exactly the same as we did with the present value function. Then we put in a comma, and then the power, which is the n, which is actually the number of periods, right, as we can see on that particular formula right there. So we click on that and want to make sure that we do absolute referencing for the column. So there should be a dollar sign to the left side of A. So again, we go ahead and the F4 key, that's what we want. So we keep on pressing until we see a dollar sign to the left of A. Once we've done that, we should be good. Then closing parenthesis, we press enter. We see that we came up with exactly the same result as we saw on the present function, right? The very first one, 0.9901. Okay, so now we can actually copy this across, and then we can copy this downwards, and there we have it. We have actually generated our present value factor table using the power function. So basically those are the two methods that one can actually use, and these tables can really come in handy. But in many cases you can access them via the internet. You can access them the back of accounting books, finance books. You're likely to find those there. So, but at least, I mean, it's always good to know, you know, how these are actually generated. And those two methods can really come in handy: present function method, as well as the power function method. Otherwise, that's all I have for you. Again, if you like the video, go ahead and like it. Share with your friends about this video, because it can really help you and know how to do some more sophisticated things that many people think they're actually impossible. All right, otherwise, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun using this video. Bye for now.